Your world, your challenges, your faith. When faith within engages the world without, there's power. It's living life from the inside out.
There are these marvelous moments in parenting when you explain something and you see that your child gets it. But the challenge so often is finding words they'll understand that do justice to what you're explaining. So how do you explain to a child the depth of what marriage is? Well, we're talking about that today here on Family Life's Inside Out. I'm Martha Manikas Foster, and my guest is author and pastor Sam Allberry, author of books for adults and now one for children. The title of his new book is God's Signpost, How Marriage Points Us to God's Love. Welcome, Sam, to Inside Out.
It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Your picture book is titled God's Signpost, How Marriage Points Us to God's Love, and in it you've used the celebration of a couple's 50th anniversary to explain the meaning of marriage to the couple's grandchildren, Ethan and Lila. Now, if you ask, I guess, anybody to define marriage, you're going to get a whole lot of different definitions. So would you start us off, Sam, with what you think are not the best definitions of marriage?
Yeah, I think in Western context now, marriage is often simply defined as a kind of romantic contract. It's just, we both make each other feel romantically fulfilled, and therefore we stick around each other. But that's such a different idea of marriage to what we see in the Bible. So it's not just based on whether I'm getting out of you what I want to be getting out of you. It's based on something far richer than that.
Mm-hmm. So right along that vein then, Sam, what do you want children hearing this book or reading along, what do you want them to take away as a good definition of marriage, and what do you see the Bible saying is God's purpose for marriage?
Yeah, well, the heart of the book is trying to show that marriage is based on a promise. And it's based on a promise because it's trying to be a mirror to the love God has shown us in Jesus, which is covenantal love. It's promise-making love. So marriage, as defined in the Bible, is between a man and a woman, and it's based on covenant vows of unconditional love. And that's because, again, it's showing us the kind of relationship we have now with Jesus Christ himself. And that's one of the purposes of marriage, is to be a signpost to the love of God in Jesus Christ for us.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sam, if you would allow me to reset the table for those just joining us, you're listening to Inside Out on Family Life. I'm talking today with author and pastor Sam Allberry. Sam, in general, what do you think we often get wrong when we try to explain complex topics to children? And certainly this is one of those complex topics.
I think that sometimes we can make it too complex. We can be kind of getting into concepts that are too complicated for that age group. But I think a more common problem I encounter is not actually trying to teach children about some of the things actually that it's good for them to know at their age. And I'm convinced we need to be helping young children have a positive vision for what marriage is meant to be at a young age, so that they have a good positive framework in place, so when they begin to sort of ask some of the more complicated questions that will always come up later on in life.
So do you think that it would be better to err on the side of being a little more in detail or a little more complex, or to be a little more simple when you're talking with a child about something big?
Yeah, I mean, you want to be age appropriate, particularly around issues like this. But I think the great thing about a young child is they will keep asking questions. So you will know if you've not yet said enough, or whether what you've said doesn't make sense. But I think I would probably err on the side of saying more than they can understand rather than less they can understand, because that way at least there's something for them to be grasping hold of. You may need to just keep trying to simplify it as you explain it, but I think we want kids to have that foundation really in place.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are some of the most important things that a parent should be conveying about God to children, and do you think that those are difficult to convey?
Well, the gospel is so beautifully simple. It can be understood by a very young child. And so what we want a child to know about God's love is that it is unconditional. God loves us because of what he's like. He doesn't love us because of what we're like. And so we can't perform our way into it, and we can't sin our way out of it. He loves us because it's his nature to love. That actually gives us amazing security. And it's something I think we we really struggle to absorb even as adults.
I was going to say that,
child,
yes.
I think a child can, and they're seeing something of that, hopefully, in a healthy household. Their own parent loving them, not because the child has done something worthy of that love yet, but because it's in the nature of the parent to love a child.
Mm-hmm. So a parent is reading this book to the child, or a grandparent is reading it to the child. What do you think that might motivate in the parent or in the grandparent, having looked at this definition of marriage and maybe, I don't know, being startled back into some sort of realization? Is that possible?
I hope so. I think it's one of the things I've seen myself, is that when things are often aimed at kids, they land on adults in a fresh way. Mm-hmm. And I'm very conscious I'm not just writing for the child who's being read to, but by the parent or grandparents or family friend who might be the one reading the story, and hoping it will give them a fresh understanding of God's love. And certainly when it comes to marriage, obviously there's no perfect marriage on this world, and I hope that the book is reassuring to show that actually God is far better at showing this kind of love than we are. We will get this wrong in different ways, to different extents, but God won't. God will always love us with a perfect love.
I guess part of what's going through my mind is that as the older person reading this to a child, you could feel like, well, I don't measure up, but the book includes that reassurance, right?
It does, and that's the point. In one sense, we're not meant to fully measure up, because only God can be God. We do what we can. We acknowledge where we get this wrong, and the gospel is for people who get this wrong. So I hope there's something reassuring about that, because ultimately our faith is not in whether we get this right, but in whether God himself is able to love us in this way, and he so beautifully is.
That's beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here on Inside Out.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My guest has been author Sam Allberry, author of books for adults, as well as this new book, the B&H Kids Children's book, God's Signpost, How Marriage Points Us to God's Love. I'm Martha Manikas Foster with Inside Out on Family Life.
Thank you for plugging into this Family Life News podcast, streaming issues-driven, family-focused news.